we're rolling.
So we're doing a double header today. I'm kind of liking this, man. We're gonna bust out and do. It's been an interesting week in the news. I know we didn't. We tried to keep the news out of the last one, you know.
Yeah, we did.
Other than
Well, that and just not being a one-trick pony all the time.
Well, you don't want to sound like a bunch of ranting, pissed off old guys.
it gets to where
Well, you can find plenty of those on freaking social media.
Oh, everywhere.
You know, where you've got these people who don't know where they don't know where to draw the fucking line.
right.
Yeah.
But now we're gonna pull our pants up to our nipples and talk like old. Let me tell you what.
fucking murder.
But no, there's some good stuff that's out there. I think we do need to cover. I mean, there's some real interesting. Cuomo. I mean, that's one of the biggest things in the news right now.
I am kind of curious to see how that's going to fucking play out.
Yeah. I think the guy probably did it. I mean, he's got the personality
He's
for it.
awfully defensive about it.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he came out and said, I basically sexually harass everybody like that. Gay, straight, black, white, I harass them all.
Yeah.
I'm an equal. Well, because he's an equal opportunity discriminator or harasser. I mean,
well, he's clearly got the mentality of I'm entitled. You know, you're the little people. I'm entitled. You're you, and I'm me, and we're separate.
About it. He does have
They do have that. So it's been interesting to see his defense of I do this to everybody, and how that hasn't played well with everybody.
Well, because now the way that I've seen him sort of defend it, and I've seen other people do this too, is that, you know, just get over it. You know.
Yeah, you just move past it.
Yeah.
See,
That's the defense.
What I hear is that it was he did it, but hey, he's not Donald Trump. At least he's not Donald Trump. Is what I get.
The contrast between what he said about Kavanaugh and what's coming out is what's cracking me up. I love because all that stuff's recent. So when Kavanaugh had his little stint of Amy Coney Barrett, the little glasses, little glasses, I'm gonna talk like somebody hurt me. You know, she's back behind the mic.
Amy, was it
not Amy Coney
Ford?
Barrett? Ford.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, she's back behind the mic, I'm just so offended and it hurt. He hurt me. So now you've got Cuomo coming out saying, he basically stood up and said, this Kavanaugh pick is awful. We need to investigate him to the fullest. He needs to be prosecuted. He needs to be stripped.
Right.
He needs to be stripped from the bench, blah, blah, blah. And now you have Cuomo, who's accused of all the exact same things, and now we're getting
with more evidence.
Exactly, with more evidence. You're getting people that have qualified all this stuff and saying,
look, his fingerprints are still on my ass.
Yeah, well, you're getting people that have qualified it that said, we had these conversations back then about
he kept my panties. God damn it!
Right, exactly. So it's interesting to hear him say, the two contrasting things where he basically came out and crucified Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. And now he's, it's just me. It's just who I am.
Right.
So it's been really interesting seeing that.
It's a typical liberal double standard. I mean, bad behavior is bad behavior. And I honestly don't care if you're conservative, if you worship Satan, or whatever it is you do. If you break the law, you deserve full weight of the law. Yeah. It doesn't matter who worships you. You should be paying the same price that every American citizen pays for.
Just like before we even started recording, when we were talking downstairs, is the whole label of Republican, Democrat, conservative, progressive. I'm like, I'm none of those things.
Yeah.
In my mind, I know what fucking right looks like.
Yeah.
Now, do I ever have an attitude where I want to see somebody suffer? No.
Yeah.
No, I don't ever have that. Unless somebody has done something to me to get that reaction.
Right.
Okay, all fucking bets are off.
Yeah.
But do I ever seek out to see some demographic? I don't care who the fuck they are. I want to see them suffer in any way. Fuck no.
No. I just assume we all get along and move along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I try to live my life. But when you see somebody,
it's turned into you either have to hate or join.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's really sad. It's not like hate and debate.
Right.
It's hate or join. And it's really kind of a fight that most conservatives, it's really, the progressives would have never made it if the conservatives have not been tolerant.
Yeah.
They would not have existed. Really wouldn't have been. And then what they do is they worm their way into a legal system, and then they pollute a court, and they get a court to make decisions that are not right.
Yeah.
that allow this behavior to go on. I mean, if you look back at if you could sit there and pull any Secret Service agent into a room
and say, what all have you seen?
Disguise his voice and disguise his face and have a conversation, dude, nobody would be sitting in their desk.
I think Dan Bongino kind of goes to your point there, is that is the case. That is how that happens.
But they still have a muzzle on him.
They do.
Because there's things he can't talk about.
Yes.
And that's the thing. And he'll honor that.
Sure. Whether you know who he is or not.
But the other side does not.
Right.
And the public accepts that.
So when I was telling y'all downstairs about this Quora site that I look, out of all of the kind of platforms that are out there, to me that's probably it runs almost in line with Reddit, only without the Wild West that you get.
Who
from
runs
fucking
Quora?
Reddit. I don't. Okay, so not who I thought it was. Yeah, because
it's not Quora.
Because certain said group, even though they use that word a lot in their fucking language,
right,
they don't own it. So I checked it out. But you know what? People have fucking holding companies that have holding companies that do all kinds of shit.
I know. I just thought it was funny.
So anyway, in this particular, I guess how they have their groups divided up, this one group that I'm not nearly methodical when it comes to Quora because it's still sort of a learning curve for me there. But the name of the group is called Bring Back Democracy.
Uh-huh.
So one of the top contributors for that particular group, according to their information, they're like a retired FBI, whatever. And so I can tell you this much, that it's a female, and she's a Russian linguist who is,
nice.
She's probably like 10 or 12 years older than me based on the years that she has listed in her service, where I was like, okay, I was still in high school based on, because she was at Monterey. She did her D-Lab there.
Cool.
You did all that shit. But she, almost in every fucking thread that she posts, and this goes like way back, is she motherfucks Trump, and it's either Trump or railing against Republicans in general. So, and on top of this, the thing that's most glaringly obvious is I don't care who the poster is, all comments have been turned off. Now, sometimes I see stuff on there that I would like to converse about, not debate, but hey, this is my take on what you just said.
At least
I'm trying to learn more.
Counterpoint.
Exactly.
I'm not looking to get onto some thread and just talk a bunch of like redneck bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation, and if I can't have a civil conversation, then I'll have no conversation.
Right. We can turn this off.
Yeah, because I don't want to be this unhinged person that fits the look of what.
Well, that's what they're fishing for.
Yeah,
they want that.
So that's the thing that drives me nuts, is how you can't. So don't call it a forum anymore. It's just.
It's just your opinion.
Here's
my opinion.
It's a billboard that nobody can fucking respond to.
It's a bully pulpit.
Yeah,
it is.
So, yes.
Getting back to your point though of pitting us against them, and I need a generic term, obviously not us as a group here, but you had Antifa come out this weekend and disrupt a bunch of people in Portland who were having a prayer service in a park. They had a permit to be there. Antifa showed up and basically threw eggs. These people are sitting down in lawn chairs legally,
so they
exercising their First Amendment.
Antifa now? I mean,
it's still a thing. I mean, it's crazy. It's still a thing.
Okay.
The police set by, which I don't fault the cops in this instance because of what's happened to them in Portland and around the world, around the nation for that matter. I mean, but the cops sat by and let it go down. I mean, they basically harassed these people. They threw their speakers in. They sprayed them with an unknown substance. They later found out, I think, was some sort of fuel, gasoline. Yeah, it was a crazy deal. And nobody was arrested. At the end of the day, nobody got arrested.
That's the kind of unhinged stuff that I'm talking about.
That's what I was getting to with when you were saying that.
Is, when I say unhinged, it cuts both ways.
It does.
I don't give a shit what faction you're with.
I don't want to see a bunch of rednecks out there pounding on people for the sake of pounding on people. I never want to see that. And we should never tolerate that. So I don't know. It's very interesting.
if the police aren't going to protect me,
Yeah.
I'm going to whoop your ass. You come at me.
Well, I've got no recourse. I have
Yeah.
no recourse
Yeah.
at that point. I can't
Right.
let you. They were kids. They
Yeah.
sprayed kids with this fuel source.
Oh, that was. I thought so. Antifa was doing the spraying.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were. That's what I was driving at.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
Antifa.
like, I wouldn't have put up with that.
Right.
I honestly wouldn't have. I would not have.
How do you stand by and let your kid
You go get one of
sprayed
those
with
trucks
gas?
that sucks up the blue shit out of the toilets, and you just put it on a monitor and you just spray that entire area that they're in.
Right.
Cover them in shit and just let them. I mean, because if they're doing it to you, because if it's flammable,
Right.
anytime you're throwing a volatile chemical on somebody, that's assault.
Well, it's an unknown chemical at
Yeah,
that because you
that's
don't know
assault.
what you're getting sprayed with when you're
Yeah.
there.
You
It's,
do. I mean, in my estimation, you're trying to inflict harm.
Yeah.
But you want to hide behind. I didn't know what he was going to fucking do.
Yeah.
That.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it would come to.
I mean, honestly, it's going to be hard for me to objectively comment on anything to do with allowing Antifa to do anything.
Yeah.
I honestly, I mean, they've
But
gotten
to
away.
Graham's point, if it was some other group, if it was some group that was right wing, I wouldn't tolerate that as
No, you shouldn't. But you know, so when it comes down to tit for tat, I wonder what they would have done if the other side was throwing something back.
Right.
Because then you would have seen the cops get involved, I think.
Right.
And that's the whole thing that I struggle with. It's like if my wife and I happen to be walking to a park, not knowing this is going on, and somebody attacks us,
Right.
dude, it's not going to be. It's going to make 6 o'clock news because if I can't get her away and they pursue,
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
Well-
It's going to be lights out for somebody because
Right.
I am not going to get hurt in the name of bullshit.
Right.
Because we're just trying to get out of here.
Right.
And I saw those assholes beat up a hot dog vendor.
Yeah.
That one video of that guy, it's an immigrant, he's a Mexican American that was out there, and they just like literally kicked his ass, destroyed his stand while cops just stood there and watched. Gotta be honest with
So
you,
is
man.
this a Seattle thing?
Yeah,
too?
this
Really?
guy didn't do
That
it.
happened recently. That was like last week sometime. I don't remember what he was
This
talking
guy didn't do
about.
a thing.
Yeah.
You know, he's just out there and he's like, hey, and they don't care.
So
they're like a pack of wild dogs, man.
Destroyed his means of earning an honest income.
And hurt him.
Yeah.
Hard. He was there to feed anybody who wanted to pay for it.
Yeah.
And he probably would have just gave it to him if it came down to, oh, I'll tear your shit up if you don't feed me. He probably would have just gave it to him. But no, that wasn't enough for them.
Now so with that
Yeah.
I'll just call it enterprising. Is
Yeah.
that guy's trying to take advantage? Not take advantage.
No,
but he's
trying to make a living.
He's exploiting an opportunity to feed people because people get hungry.
Yeah.
But then you have
Yeah, because
this
riding
other
takes
group-
energy, man.
This other group looks at what he's doing as capitalism,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know,
Well, it goes back to your point of, and that's where I was driving this
Yeah.
narrative is, look, it's not that you. Sometimes you don't choose to be on a side, but you're forced in that position.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at with
Yeah.
this is
But if you protect yourself, you become the poster boy.
you do. You had that guy, what was that? It was probably 3 or 4 months ago. There was an old man driving his truck.
Yeah.
And Antifa stopped him in the middle of the road, surrounded his truck,
Yeah.
and he pointed a gun at him. He was the guy that ended up getting arrested
Yeah.
out of that whole deal. And
Yeah.
it's like, wait a minute. This guy was unlawfully detained. He was threatened by multiple
But he's
actors. I mean,
wrong.
yeah.
Several guns on the outside pointing at him.
Yeah. But he's the one that ends up in the pokey at the end
Yeah.
of the day. So,
So-
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's like the government in this instance is taking the lesser of the pushback. I mean, they're going to get less pushback.
Well, I don't think
from
that.
this guy.
I think that's I believe it's a calculated decision.
Maybe.
I believe it's
I
calculated.
could see it being
Yeah.
either way. I think
Yeah.
in the end the DA looks at that and says, "Well, this is just easier."
with cherry picking.
Yeah,
what-
exactly.
what
Well,
you're
this is
what you're
if
gonna
I do this,
pursue.
this will be easier.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's frustrating. It's definitely frustrating to watch from the outside. I'm glad where we live, we don't see that.
Well, I'm
as
glad
much.
you guys can to have that discussion because for me, I'm not very tolerant.
Yeah.
I will tell you, my personal safety is more important to me than somebody's fucking idea of what they think they can get away with and what they can't. I mean, it's just fair warning.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to leave an area, but if it comes down between somebody like stopping me
Yeah.
and we're going to take you out and do well, you better bring a lunch and some friends because you're going to be there a while. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be a Reginald Denny ever,
Right.
ever.
Well, and so I will say when you're demonstrating out in public somewhere, and you've got two factions of either side of the argument.
See, that's the other thing that I never get, and I never understand is why does the government let these two? Basically, you have a local government that's letting these two factions interact with each other.
Nothing's going to get solved there.
But it's almost like WWE for them. It's almost like, do they want this to take place? It's almost like, is this part of it orchestrated for an outcome? That's what I'm driving at in this whole situation.
I think it is.
You see what I'm saying? You've now created this event that you know is going to happen this way.
Well,
why did you let this happen to begin with?
You can't pacify bad behavior because bad behavior just progressively gets worse.
Right. Well, and the thing is from so I'm gonna view law enforcement as a business. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
So law enforcement is still in the business of upholding
the law. Right.
So they're not going to choose sides.
Right. I get their perspective, and that's what I was driving at in all this. I wouldn't get out of my car either if I knew I was going to get out, lose my job, potentially get sued. You know, they're trying to make officers liable.
Go to prison.
Right, go to prison at worst case scenario, but at the least probably make you liable civilly for it. Right. I mean, that's there's been talk of that making officers civilly liable for
they put
interactions.
Several of them are in prison right now.
Now they're okay. I know that I've seen some discussion where, you know, trying to demand that if you're in the law enforcement field that you have to carry some sort of liability insurance.
Yeah.
I'm like, so you're going to stack that on top of all the other financial responsibilities that at the end of the day, this police officer, he's a normal dude just like you.
Yeah, he's a person.
So he's just like you have a Visa bill, you're going to stack this other bill that nobody else has to have.
Right.
But simply because he chose this profession, he needs to carry this level, this insurance cost.
And we all know how insurance works. You know, the minute they can weasel out of it, you'll be on the hook for the money. You know what I mean? Well, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, so now you have to foot the bill because we're not going to cover this claim.
If you go out and demonstrate somewhere, you should have to. As far as I'm concerned, you should have to get insurance for that shit too.
Exactly. You know, that would probably fix a lot of this.
That should come with the permit.
Graham, I think you stumbled onto something.
Property damage?
Property damage? The thing that I don't like is insurance companies win either way on this. But it also can act as a deterrent, even a financial deterrent.
Well, I got insurance. Let's break all this shit.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to end up being like.
Well, what's funny now you've got me thinking about commercials on you're sitting there and there comes the Aflac duck.
Yeah.
Want to tear some shit up this weekend?
Aflac. I wonder what
he's
a
walking
Geico commercial
taking
would
his
look
shit
like.
every 5 steps.
Yeah.
Liberty Mutual.
Yeah.
Liberty. Tear some shit.
Whatever that fucking bird is, he's like fucking shit up.
Yeah.
Hey, the Mayhem guy will have a new job. You know that?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
That would be a hilarious video.
I'm just glad. I'm glad you guys can navigate that one because for me, I got to be honest with you, man.
We're over here letting Ken cool down. When I started talking about this, I looked straight at Ken, and I saw the look on his face, and then I started looking at Graham. I'm like, Graham, we got to cover this.
So here's what I will say to the look that I see on your face is I know that there's a leopard can't change their stripes.
Yeah.
If you're intolerant, then you're fucking intolerant. And that's just how you are. No,
not Ken. I don't think he means Ken.
What I'm talking about is I don't care who the person is. If you don't like something, it's in your fucking nature, no matter what, to not like it. You can't.
Well, let's get back to the nature of the protesters. They were told by government entities that it's okay to do this.
Yeah,
but sometimes these protests are like fucking parties.
Well, they are, but they're managed. What you got to remember is that this really started happening around Ferguson. Really was their. This is like a test bed. There's nefarious dudes sitting in a room in a think tank, thinking of ways to make this progress even more. I mean, this isn't like random people protesting police abuse. These are political entities sitting in a room,
driving policy.
That are driving policy. That are receiving funds from political opposition.
It's a long game.
It is a very long game, and the pawns in this are the kids. Looking for something to do.
Definitely.
Okay? So now you have a society of people that are collecting welfare and rental money to pay offset their rent.
Right.
You know, it's with nothing to do.
Right.
So what do? They get on Facebook, they get on blogs, they get on Instagram, TikTok.
Too much time on your hands is what it boils down to.
And so what? Hey, what are you doing now? Nothing. Well, let's go fucking protest.
Exactly.
Okay. And then when they get down there,
well, and we've learned that some of those guys collecting off the books paycheck for that deal.
Absolutely. Then you got a bunch of professional protesters that mingle in with these kids.
Yeah.
And it's like a mob mentality. Once that wave starts, rage goes. It's like if you stand in a closet. We did a psychological experiment one time when you stand in an elevator and one person claps, not much happens. But by the time the second and third person join in, everybody decides to join in too.
Right.
And so it's that whole movement that these people capitalize on.
Yeah.
Now, what I think is really sad about the Portland thing is that I used to go to Portland for work, and I'm not going to say it's my favorite city, but it wasn't my least favorite city. It was actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
Now it looks like fucking Baghdad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's a war zone, and there's people that have lost their businesses, lost their lives, or been hurt in some other way, and their city government is fine with that.
Yeah.
Passive.
They very much sit on their ass. I will tell you that there's more of us than there will ever be of them.
Right.
And they know this, but they use the law to get away with it. I'm telling you right now, it's been hard for me not to go down there and just say, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. That's it. You're out.
Yeah.
There's 2 bridges that come into this town that cross this one river. You have a choice. Because I will tell you, man, when you let violence like that go,
Yeah.
and you allow them to make money off of artists and entertainers,
Yeah.
and politicians, that's bullshit. That's complete bullshit, and I have no tolerance for that.
It is their own little economic segment.
It is. Big time.
That sucks up money for them. You know what I mean?
It is. If you look at the fundraising during the last election,
Yeah.
what was it called? Act Blue or something
Yeah,
like that?
Act Blue, the Democrats.
That was
Oh,
such
really?
a communist.
Yeah, we talked about that at one point on the podcast.
It's a communist manifesto for raising money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then you sit back as protesters. This is how stupid they are. The benefactors of this are the leadership that live in $1 million homes,
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar homes in really affluent areas, surrounded by people that they say you should hate.
Well, you got the BLM. You got the BLM lady that lives in the $1.2 million gated community.
It's the Jimmy Hoffa's of the political.
It is.
That's that's a great analogy, Graham.
It's exactly what it is, and how stupid people are. And then again, you have the other people that, I'm not going to say it because it's going to sound so wrong. I'm done. I'm not saying another word because it'll create chaos for the story here. So I'm not going to say anything about that. I just think that at the end, it's time for this shit to stop.
I agree.
It's time for it to stop. You've got people, and then you have this whole pandemic bullshit where you have a concert where there's 40,000 people, and that's Jimmy Buffett had a concert.
Yeah.
That's bad, but Obama can have a birthday party with 700 people there.
I caught. So I did catch.
I'm like, what the hell?
End. I caught the tail end of that because there was a response. There was a comment made about telling people to delete photos.
Yeah.
That's interesting because it's funny watching both sides of this. You've got Jennifer Aniston on one side saying, I'm going to cut out everybody in my life that's not vaccinated. But then you have other artists that are out there and like, I'm not going to play your concert if you're going to put this passport thing on.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to watch that divide take place.
Rogan had a big freaking
it was a good podcast.
I've been seeing a lot more people posting more links to his conversation about that.
Yeah.
As it's making like it's
I
making the rounds.
I think Rogan's idea is probably more mainstream than what they want out there.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rogan's, for all his voting proclivities and saying I'm a Bernie supporter, I really don't think the guy really pays that close attention to politics. The guy says some pretty common sense stuff.
Right.
And it's like...
And then he throws that one zinger out there, though, that's like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah, it's a guy's own thought, so I give it to him. But at least for the most part, when I listen to him, I'm like, this guy kind of thinks like you do, Graham. In my opinion, he's like, what sounds right? You know what I mean?
And that's...
And I think he gets down rabbit holes with that stuff, and that's what leads him astray. But
that's my whole deal with just the whole conservative, Republican, Democrat, progressive.
Yeah.
I hate those fucking labels.
The box. Well, then you're putting a box, and then you're you're put in an area and you can't get out of it. You're
Well, the thing
stationary.
is-
Well, it's
you
called predictive behavior patterns.
you
So what
may
ends
not
up
even-
happening, because you believe this way, therefore you must be this.
Yes.
That's why the box is a bad thing.
But you may not even check all the blocks for
You don't have to.
whatever that fucking label is.
yeah,
Right.
I'm
exactly.
like, me, as long as I'm not in a box, I check whatever fucking labels
Makes
make
sense.
sense to my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
If we could all get back to that, I mean, how much more peaceful would it be? I mean, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
of course.
Because
Yeah.
you'd get back.
But that's the golden rule, Todd. So there's no greed involved.
yeah.
The problem with everything right now
Yeah,
is
yeah.
greed is the problem.
Yeah.
If you have politicians making decisions on whether you can open your business, where you can go,
right.
but yet they're still making a paycheck. And not only while they're making a paycheck, they refuse to do their job. 1, 2, they're making investments that are making them millions of dollars.
Right.
I'd like to see the curve of money that their investments have earned them since COVID started
Yeah.
versus before, and
Right.
then have that argument with me.
Well, so yeah, the amount of information that they're exposed to make a financial decision to go,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
you know what? Years down the road, if I invest in whatever this is,
If I vote this way,
so how I look at it is if you were really serving your base,
Yeah.
wherever it is that you would be sharing that same fucking information with your constituents.
But that never
and
happens.
Every one
Never.
of you would be making fucking money.
Right.
personal
Not
greed,
just
dude.
you.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, in a manner of speaking, some of those people need to be fucking clubbed. Not like in the sense of
yeah. A
it's-
public beatdown and say, look, you're no longer making your way back into office.
I
You're
need
no
you to
longer
be-
getting these perks.
Yes,
Screw you, you're out.
I need you to be embarrassed, not only publicly,
Yeah.
but I need you to be fucking ruined in a way to where you learn a lesson.
Well, that's funny because it loops back around to what we originally started talking about, and it's about being embarrassed. Nobody's embarrassed. Do you
Uh-uh.
think Como's embarrassed?
There's
at
no
all?
shame at all. No shame at all.
I mean,
until there's a shift in whatever their ideology is. Like suddenly I feel doing this, it's because the collective says this is okay, until the collective says it's not.
Yeah.
And then you don't fucking do that shit.
right. But the collective is controlled by just this small minority.
yeah,
You know what I
like
mean? And it's funny. It's funny watching that from a societal perspective. You kind of step back and you can look at this and see it going on, and it's interesting to watch. It's sad, but it's also interesting to watch the human psyche play.
Just
play
the
at
sheer
this.
amount of weird respect that's given to that fucking.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm like,
That's
are you-
exactly.
That's like, this is like almost idolatry in a way.
it is.
It
and
is.
If you think about it, so if let's say we rolled this back and this all took place in the 80s. Here's what would happen: Chris Cuomo would be asked, "Hey, when did you know your brother was a sexual predator? When you interviewed him, did you know all this information? And what did CNN know?
No more
I would like to see.
softball
I would like to see Chris Cuomo cornered and those questions asked of him. Those are legitimate. If we had a legitimate media, those questions would get asked.
well, they're
and
even
they don't.
they're even bold though, where he said, "I got your back, bro."
He did. That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, okay, that means that you're not going to be objective,
right.
and you're not going to
Yeah,
be probing,
yes,
and fuck what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
I got your back, man.
But it
We're in
seems-
this together.
It seems like at some point somebody, even on their side, would look at this and say, "I've got all this information, and I can make some serious bank by releasing this, no matter where I got to go."
So
there's a monetary value.
So
that I can
shame is
assign.
based on public behavior in regard to your actions.
Yeah.
And when that barrier is gone and they say you can be who you want to be and don't let anybody tell you any different, you get this whole shift in that.
Yeah.
People don't say, no, stay away. They're now forced to include you. And you can't do anything about it, because if you do anything about it, then you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
This goes back to bakeries. This goes back to businesses that make a decision. Now, do I agree with it? Not really, because when you open your door to the public, there are certain things you have to be willing to accept.
Yeah.
If not, then make it a private club,
Yeah.
and charge membership. Yeah,
yes.
and do it that
Become
way.
Costco of whatever
exactly,
you are.
Exactly. But when you have an open door like that, and
Yeah, you're open to whatever
You're-
comes walking in the fucking door.
exactly. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But what ends up happening though is that one side will claim, well, how can I have a particular group only club,
Mm-hmm.
but then I can tell nobody else they can have their own club?
Right.
And that's what we see a lot of. We're seeing a lot of these alt groups that all start up on one side that are not accepting of others.
Yeah.
You know, they are drawing a line. Yet, this other side of the room has no choice because they can't do that. And that is what I think is part of the problem. Guys like Cuomo, they've been with us forever. When you go back
they're like a dynasty.
They are a dynasty.
Because they're fucking dad.
Because they're a bunch of thieves is what they were.
Well, yeah. I mean, clearly links. I mean, this is known information.
It's a crime enterprise.
He had definite leaks to the mafia. That's why he couldn't run for president. They really wanted that guy to run for president in the 80s, early 90s. They wanted him to be the next big thing out of New York. Yeah. And they knew they couldn't do it. There was FBI probes. I mean, it got really serious.
That's why New Yorkers can never run for the presidency anymore.
Yeah.
They really can't.
There's not a lot of them that if they're in power already. Yeah. I was surprised Rudy Giuliani got as far as he did.
I am too. But but he never made it to the top
He
either.
didn't. Yeah. He didn't. You notice he didn't make the cut.
Well, because there's always going to be that stigma.
Oh, yeah.
You come from New York.
Even if you didn't, it's there. You know what I mean? Because so many of them have been involved. There have been FBI probes that have produced evidence.
So, like when Obama was elected. So I know that there's always a big deal made about, he came from Illinois, Chicago.
Well, they had to get rid of Blagojevich to get him in there, first of all.
Hawaii. So they always make a big deal about, this is where he was born. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then we're not even going to
get down the birther tube. Yeah.
But so when you look at, because I look at sort of the kind of the way New York and Chicago are, as they're, those governments.
Very similar operations.
Those governments, hell, even fucking New Orleans. Has always been like this very seedy operation of, it doesn't have a great fucking reputation as far as having like a well-run city government.
Well, it always starts with unions. If you look at those towns, they were always big, huge union towns, and that's where that comes from. I mean, all that stuff ties back in together. It's not conspiratorial. This is stuff that's known. Yeah, you can look it up. I'm not going to do the research for you on the mic here, but I mean, you can look it up. It's all there.
Even if it's if it's not 100%
right
accurate, some elements are accurate.
Right.
So the way I look at it, it's not just if it's a little dirty, it's still dirty.
Right.
Oh yeah. And everybody is willing to accept the fact that politics has to be dirty.
Yeah.
They've always had that. They've always had that that connotation added to it. And they're very bilious in the sense of the way they go about attacking the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like, at the end of the day, there used to be when you talk shit about somebody, they'd just meet you outside and they'd punch you right in the face.
Yeah.
Literally, you would get your ass kicked.
But we're a society now of torts and so nobody's doing anything like that. Right. So and I don't foresee us ever going back to that unless you become a lawless society.
Yeah, and sadly I hope we don't get there. I pray that we don't get there.
No.
I wish it would just change and go back to the way it was, where we all just kind of got along.
But Portland, here's the problem, though. Portland's a prime example of that's not going to ever happen.
Yeah.
Okay? Portland is a prime example. Seattle is a prime example that's not going to happen. The reason why it doesn't happen in areas like ours is because whether the government gets involved or not, there's a bunch of us that are going to say, you know what?
Well, I think we prove that in times of crisis, because look at what happens when we have hurricanes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, the Cajun Navy shows up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we do things as a community down here.
Absolutely.
And we don't let stuff. That's really the difference between us and them.
You want to have a community.
But we also are backed by our sheriff's departments.
We are.
For the most part. Because if you go back into early laws, sheriffs were kind of law of the land.
They were.
And they typically are the highest law enforcement in the state, other than the governor.
Yeah,
that truly are representative of the people.
Now, the one thing I'm kind of butt up against.
Yeah, because police chiefs are not elected; they're appointed.
Yeah.
So I want to have a community that's sort of cohesive and
me
works.
Too.
I don't want us to have a cohesive community because the sheriff's department exists.
Right.
You want a cohesive society because society wants it to be like that.
Not because they're afraid. The sheriff's department exists inside of that, and we all back each other.
But one side is going to promote. The problem is we're past that reasoning. We're literally way past that reasoning. You have one side that says, screw that shit. We're going to progressively ratchet this up. And they have a complicit political party, and they have a media that promotes it.
Sure.
And literally feeds it.
Yeah.
So you have a citizenry that says like, hey, you know what? I want this to go back the way it should be. It should go this way. But the other side's like, well, you know what? We're going to use federal entity to interject into your state entity.
Yeah,
you have the guy POTUS is doing that shit right now.
There's a lot of what are considered just like infrastructures of just life. Okay?
Yeah.
And they're weaponized in some way. So
Yes, sure.
I do get that.
Well,
Yes.
and it goes again. This goes back to what I was saying. You have a government entity that's almost allowing this to happen, like a wrestling event. And think about it; they get federal dollars out of that. Anytime something like this goes down, they get a paycheck.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can spend this. My brother-in-law now has a cleanup job where he can go clean up the mess. The ambulance service that my cousin owns made a bunch of money from hauling all the bodies off.
So what one person sees as a great cause is a cash grab to somebody else.
So there's your difference between true capitalism and people sucking off the system. Because literally, the people that are becoming victimized are the hardworking people.
And
They're people that are running businesses, actually performing a physical service, building infrastructure.
the really interesting part of this, though, is if you look at it, communism can't exist without capitalism.
Well,
you can't have this communism going on
You need
without
something to
capitalism.
feed
You
the
need the
system.
infusion.
Well, you feed it till it runs out, then you have a rebellion,
Yeah.
and then you start all over again.
Right.
Communism is like that tumor that never goes away. It really is. As long as you leave one of them, one cell alive, it's got a chance to rally and come back.
Yeah.
It's just hard for me to imagine fucking communism, and in the form that you see in a history book,
Right.
existing in the U.S.
But it is. Now this is where I'll disagree with you, because if you look at what's being
Now, I'm not talking about bastardizing. So I'm just saying when you look at it, the way communism looks when you've looked at the history
like
books
Stalin, you mean?
Yes,
Intellectuals
yes.
always think they can improve it, though. You got to remember, intellectuals think, well, okay, that didn't work, but we can make this part work.
But in some way, you want this, but you want it to look different.
Different.
I don't want you to make. I damn sure don't want it to look like communism in Russia.
But that's what it's going to end up with, because history. I mean,
Yeah.
you have scientific models in place that say this is what's going to happen. At some point, somebody will seize power that's a Stalin, and then you're going to have that mentality.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast.
Well, then, and also when society, the generations of society grow up with a system that's a certain way, the more and more you kind of take away,
yeah.
the next generation they've always existed in a society where there was limitations, and the next generation
You grow the limitations till they're used to it.
But there's always a layer of leadership that are below the cause
Yeah.
that always want to undermine the leadership
Yeah.
and promote their agenda. That's part of the problem with these things, is the difference between totalitarian...
as we see it. Yes.
Well, yeah, it is. Well, it really is, because under totalitarian rule, they're always trying to overrun the castle and kill the king.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. It doesn't matter. The guy starts out like, oh, hey, until he gets to he goes, well, that guy's living in a castle, and I'm living in a hut outside the castle.
Right.
Why can't I, and then next thing you know, you're captain of the guard.
Yeah.
And you're trying to poison him, or you're waiting. I mean, we make movies about this stuff all the
Right.
time. We write books about it. Man, that's man versus man. That's always going to be.
Yeah.
It's always going to be about greed. It's always going to be about lust. It's always going to be about control. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's kind of what we're born into.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening, and no matter who you bow to or whatever you do, seems like always somebody wants to form a club,
Yeah.
an allegiance of a
So
club.
you can exclude somebody else.
Exactly, or control them.
Right.
If you find a willing group of masses to control.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be our legacy on this planet.
Yeah.
And so you sit there and it becomes so formulaic. I mean, especially for guys like us. I mean, we look and talk about this stuff all the time, and we're very well studied, I believe.
Yeah.
As a
I've read
group.
some books.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I will say,
Yeah.
we're only as smart as the information that we choose to put in front of us.
Sure.
So, and that's like everybody.
Yeah.
I don't care. The people who have a different opinion about something, their limitations are only limited to the shit that they put in front of them to read. And a lot of it will have something to do with where your personal beliefs are anyway.
I'll agree with that to some degree, but at some point, critical thinking does play into that.
Yes.
And how you can ration through a problem.
I'm not taking that out.
Yeah.
See, I don't leave as many leaders attached to the vein as you do. There's right and there's wrong. There's doing good for mankind. There's doing bad for mankind. The problem with selfless acts of kindness and compassion is there's always somebody wanting to capitalize off of that act.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what makes this go wrong, because we all say, well, we want it to go back to the way it was. Okay? Well, we had to fight. We had to fight to get it there.
Right.
We had to fight to hold on to it. At some point in time, we got fat, dumb, and happy and quit fighting to protect it. And now we're going, oh, shit, we've lost so much of it. It's going to be a fight to get it back. You see the pattern here? And so it's like a garden. You got to keep weeding it, because one weed turns in, the minute you turn your back, one weed turns into 50 weeds.
Yeah.
The problem is, how do you decide what I'm going to follow and who gets to stay and who has to go? And that's where the problem becomes, because you've got all this diversity of thinking going in the individual direction, not for the cause of the greater good.
Right.
Where we used to be that way, where Mr. Smith would come to Washington, serve his session, and go back to his farm or his factory.
Right.
So we don't have that. That's turned into a money-making enterprise. That's where it starts to break down, because now people have special interests that carry a bag of money that go to somebody that can make an influence for them now. And that guy says, yeah, I'll do this, but I want a piece of this action.
Right.
But, you can't give it to me. You got to give it to my brother-in-law.
Right.
Or you got to give it to my wife, or you got to give it to my sister.
Strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where it comes apart. What ends up happening is it becomes a money-making enterprise. That's just like universities. I know so many guys that are so much smarter than university-educated people that are really good at what they do, but they don't get the plate or seat at the table because they don't have a sheepskin on the wall that you gave money to receive to be a part of the club. So that's where we run into this with businesses. We run into this with all kinds of things. A person feels entitled because I went to an Ivy League school. Therefore, I am smarter and should have a better position at the table than you.
And that's only their metric.
Exactly.
That's the thing that drives me nuts.
Me too.
When somebody passes judgment on something, they're only using their set of metrics. That's why, like all the shit that I say, it's my set of metrics.
Yeah.
I have a certain ideology in my head, and there's a lot of times where I'll challenge whatever it is that whatever my beliefs, or I'll test it.
See, that's what makes it work for guys like us, because I'm exactly the same way. I always ask myself, what if they're right?
Well, that's the Socratic method. What
Exactly.
You're talking about.
Exactly.
But okay, so to your point about you want things to go back the way that they were, so to speak. So I loved growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Me too. Yeah. It's a halcyon vision of growth, growing up. Yeah.
When I think about it, I'm like, okay, do I want to listen to fucking Def Leppard and Led Zeppelin forever? No.
Hell yeah.
No.
78 Camaro.
See, and that's how I am about cultures. I love cultures.
Yeah.
I love learning about cultures.
Yeah.
I love the food. I like the way they do things.
Yes.
I like all that. So you can have all that, but what ends up happening is there's always anybody that comes from an oppressed country that comes to a free country. There's always somebody that sneaks in that doesn't like the fact that those people left and came to this country,
right?
And they start shit. It seems like this is the problem we have everywhere, is that freedom is one of those things that you have to constantly maintain. We kind of set up an antiquated gatekeeper, and just
that's what I mean when I say to go back.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that mentality, not necessarily.
Yeah, I know
the whole culture.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
aspect of it, but that mentality of thinking.
Well, the part that what aggravates me more than anything is when they teach the youth to hate America.
Yeah.
Now the problem with that is this is a very giving country. We give our resources to help others. We give our young to go fight wars and die for other countries. We have all kinds of things that happen in this country at the expense of either a life, at the feet of a family, for all these freedoms. Yet
a lot of blood, sweat, and
tears, a lot of work goes into it.
Yeah,
we just didn't magically arrive.
Exactly, it's called the investment theory of work, and what everybody sells today is the instant everything lifestyle, because you see it all the time. take a pill, fix this, buy this, you won't have this problem. And it ends up not working. It creates a lot of other problems. You know, there's a great book I read not too long ago. It's called Step Right Up. And Step Right Up was how it was talking about the medicine men from Egyptian days all the way up to the modern era, where a guy would always have a bottle of snake oil.
Snake oil, yeah.
Or some special herbs or whatever it is. And if you take this, it'll make you stronger, faster. Yes, stronger, smarter, healthier. And, you know, and so we live in the age of that enticement.
Right.
Where we're always looking for an easier way to do things because, my God, work is just too much. I mean, you know, that's what you have in this mentality. I mean, in this world today, in this country, nobody wants to work.
Yeah.
And when they go to work, they bitch about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every time I go into a restaurant, and only because of what's going on now, I look at restaurants nowadays, and everybody is like pissing and moaning at these restaurants. And I'm like, well, this is kind of the product of not having a generation that knows how to work.
Right. You have people that are just wanting to sit at home because they're paid to sit at home.
And then you have employers that say, well, I can't get anybody else to work, so I have to accept this work standard. Right?
No, that makes sense.
That's a big problem.
Who's training who?
Exactly. And that's what ends up happening. And so, you know, I don't know. I just look at it. We're our own worst enemy. A lot of times freedom creates sloth.
Yeah.
That's true.
It really does. And then also, though, on the other side of it, this is the thing that drives me crazy because I know a lot of these people. Because they're successful at one thing, they think they're brilliant at everything else.
Yeah.
And so they should be able to tell you when I actually think they're lucky.
Yeah.
Because there's probably 101 people that tried to do the same thing you did.
Yeah.
You just happen to find that right quarter in time, and it worked for you. You
Right.
work met opportunity, met follow through, met success, right? And so
sometimes when you, it's the your timing of when you came into this fucking world.
Absolutely.
Because if you'd have come in like, let's just say like in the 17 or 1800s, you know, based on, you know, whatever your programming was, you just wouldn't have made it.
Yeah,
past like month one.
Darwin would have taken over at that point and said,
Yeah.
you're no longer with us.
And the thing is like, you're not saying that you wish that upon that person, but the thing
that's
is,
the reality of it.
when you start getting into this like philosophical, you know, these philosophical differences, I'm not talking down to anybody. I'm just fucking talking.
Yeah.
You know, shit that's on my head, you know, thoughts that I may have. Sometimes they may be fucking ridiculous as shit.
Well, and then
but you don't fucking know. That's the beauty of philosophy.
Yeah, and so not only discernment, but the ability to agree while you disagree is lost. It really is. Because you either have to agree or I'm now trained to hate you.
Yeah.
So
both sides learn from that, though. Because I'll forget this if I don't.
Okay.
So what ends up happening, because I'm getting old, what ends up happening with disagreement, and I learned through disagreement. Okay, so if I have, to your point earlier, if I have, at that point in time, I have an idea in my head how something is, and I bounce that off of a friend, and a friend comes at me with a different viewpoint, I will reevaluate that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm going to throw away my whole moral coding to agree with him, but I will say, you know what, I didn't think about looking at it in that way. Okay, this has been something that the collaborative thinking has been muddled into collaborative groupthink. Therefore, the movement takes on this thing.
Yeah.
No, it's still about what the individual can deduce. We have people that are trained in school not to think that way. They're trained to go with the collective whole.
It goes back to the critical thinking.
Exactly. They follow the cloud. Basically, you're either under the cloud or you're out of the cloud. And that's the problem. Is individual thinking has been basically broken down. You're not going to pass my class if you don't do it this way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's what ends up happening over a period of time is it trains in a behavior to stand in a line, to wait for something, as opposed to, well, how about I'm just going to go somewhere else?
Yeah.
You know?
Or some other way of doing it.
Right.
I don't want to suggest that you do it this way.
Exactly. And so that's where I come from, where I think. I'm like, I know I'm not always right. Okay? But I'm also going to test what I think is right. And if I see enough evidence that says, you know what? I thought it through, but I didn't think it through enough.
Right.
Then I will do that. And I think that's really part of the problem is everybody's mentally lazy. They're looking at, I mean, think about it. You're fed fast food, which is bad for you. You're fed a lot of stress, which is bad for you. You're fed horrible television and entertainment, which is bad for you. I mean, how many of us really sit there and watch television anymore?
Yeah.
It's all streaming now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're selecting what we want to watch.
Exactly.
And it's an enrichment of our time.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people will mindlessly sit down like Jennifer Aniston. Okay, I think she's pretty. Okay. But I'm not going to base my life on her opinion.
Right.
Play the cards you were dealt, honey.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Show us your boobs.
There you go. You see, there you go. Yep. That's the thing. And I think that...
yeah. I mean, and I know that's probably going to, whoever listens to this...
Yeah.
That's a joke. You'll get over it.
But the thing is like, it'll be an unpopular opinion, but it's an opinion nevertheless.
And they'll miss all the nuggets that were laid before it. And this is what I'm talking about. Instead of looking at it like, oh, I like that. Well, I didn't quite agree with that, but I get the premise of this.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, this is, and I'm only saying this for context. Why do you think we have so many churches?
Denominations.
Yeah, all the denominations, because everybody has figured out that nobody is ever happy with rules and authority.
Yeah.
So we're going to come up with our ways of either softening them
right.
or redefining them, and we're going to redirect you.
Or in some cases, hardening them. It's all about...
Yeah.
Exactly.
In the end, it's about... Can I get a check out of this?
There you go.
I need to live like by a very rigid set of rules.
Right.
Yeah.
And we all know people that are like that.
Yeah.
To some degree.
I listened to another podcast that I won't mention, but they were like they were talking about that difference in humanity, where you can sit there and you can go through a life living next door to somebody and seeing them every day and being cordial until that relationship becomes a little more personal in the sense of, oh, you go here, or oh, you eat that, or oh, you talk to him,
right?
And then all of a sudden, that really nice vibe that was between you all
suddenly
dissipates.
Yeah,
and you have to ask yourself, well, why does that happen? I mean, we
were checked some blocks.
There you go. And now, where did those blocks come from?
Yeah.
So those are things that
they always existed. You just didn't know they were there and didn't know when they were being checked.
Right, exactly. And that's what we see in society today. Right. Everybody has their own little huddle. It used to be that you couldn't survive without, and I don't like this phrase at all because I don't believe it takes a village. That shit. I hate when it takes a village to raise a child.
I don't like. I hate that evolved into.
Yeah, because it's saying don't listen to your parents, listen to the village.
To me, it was a smart thing until she fucking took it over.
Right.
Now nobody's saying.
Well, they redefined it.
Yeah,
they redefined it. And
that's what drives me.
That's That's the point I'm getting to. So what ends up happening is we love taglines.
Yeah.
And so you take a tagline that's famous, and you get a hold of it, and you just redefine it, and you start reapplying it. It's like a song, like Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow. Remember that song?
Yeah.
Until that became a campaign song, I used to love that song.
Yeah.
Well,
and then when it became a campaign song, out.
Without saying...
No more Stevie Nicks for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Without saying the whole
and
line.
Bucky, what's his name?
Without saying the whole line from Clerks 2, it's I'm bringing it back. I'm
Yeah.
bringing it back.
Right.
Insert whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
For those who've seen Clerks 2, know what I'm talking about.
Those are good movies too. I really like those guys. I like movies like that. I like counterculture stuff.
Yes.
To me, because it doesn't offend me. Now, it offends people I know. I have some friends that are so holier than thou that they will not allow themselves to hear the F word, or friggin' to them is a curse word.
Wow.
Oh, it's the connotation is this. I'm like,
guess who's not getting a Christmas
gift?
gift?
If you move next to them, just think if you live next door to them, you couldn't have conversations with them if you'd known that ahead of time.
Exactly.
But see, it's funny how y'all managed to work through that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whereas we've lost.
We just don't talk to each other.
I want to
we don't go hang out.
I want to find some wrapping paper that all it's printed all over it is here's your friggin' gift.
Yeah.
Here's your friggin' gift.
Well, so to my point though is I'm more amiable. I'm more willing to accept your differences than you are mine. That's the point that I think
it doesn't, because it doesn't change the oxygen in my fucking sphere.
It's still humanity.
Yeah.
And to your point, who wants the violence? None of us want the violence. But if you put me in a corner, I'm going to bring it.
Yeah. Because
I'm not going to be sucked up by an evil that is out there to do harm for me. So at the end of the day, it's really funny because, I mean, you guys know me well enough to know that once I've given somebody a chance, the only time they're changing is when they're hurt or dying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm really not going to be compassionate to that because at the end of the day, when you had a chance to be good, when you had a chance to be right, you chose to be hurtful to somebody.
Right.
This is what our tolerance level with our elected representation is come to. I was responding to a Crenshaw post the other day where he's talking about not complying and, don't fall for the mandates and stuff like that. It's fun until our representation feels the sting of consequence.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. And it's the same thing with your employer. They were talking about, this is the thing I find very dangerous. It's not a law that you have to go get a shot.
Right.
Okay. But we're going to allow companies to break the law that mandate you get this shot because it's violating your civil rights.
Right.
It's
HIPAA,
violating
all
HIPAA.
kinds of things. Yeah.
We were talking about My Body, My Choice.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
How they
Alyssa Milano
exactly
in particular.
And there was a guy, Officer Tatum, ran a wonderful video showing while Trump was president. I'm not endorsing the Trump presidency by any means. I'm saying that when Trump was president and they were rushing to get a vaccine, they were crapping all over that. Oh, this vaccine's this, and I'm not putting my body until and it's the same vaccine now after January.
They go back to how did he let it escalate to
Yes.
this? And I'm like, it's not like the dude had played any personal responsibility in suddenly importing the fucking virus here.
Yeah.
We're completely ignoring the story about hypothetically where this virus was developed.
It's weaponized.
We're completely overlooking that. We're going to specifically target this one president in the freest nation in the world and how it's his fucking fault.
Yeah.
And we're not going to take anything he comes up with to help it get better.
And I base what I just said based on all the media and print that was put out.
That's completely undeniable. You couldn't, you know what I'm saying?
You can't hide it. It's there.
You can't. That's what I mean. That's
it's a
so
soundbite
wide
that's
open.
in the verse. Yeah.
And the thing that drives me nuts about the media, whether you're on terrestrial, on network news, or you're involved in a news network that has just a left leaning kind of, a leaning that's opposite of mine.
Right.
Is you don't look at the entire picture. You're just focusing on
the
negative
that you
shit
want.
on Trump.
Right.
And so everything I put out is going to be shit.
That's the difference between propaganda and fair and balanced news reporting. And so it used to be they would give you what they found factual at that time.
Yeah.
Well, when news
and let
organizations
you make your decision.
didn't have to be held accountable for what they were fucking saying.
Right. Exactly. And now, it's because during the Nuremberg trials, they actually tried and executed propagandists that were part of the media at the time.
And when news gets now suddenly labeled under entertainment, that's when you get fucking fast and loose with.
Well, then it's whatever we want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it becomes a ratings game, and we've seen enough exposure of all the things that are wrong with everything that's happening right now. But now you're at a point now to where you're going to be pushed into a corner. You're just going to be herded up and pushed into a corner, and I mean to make a decision.
Yep.
And at some point in time, when they're done playing with that, what's the next level? Well, we're just going to get rid of those that don't agree, or what? What happens?
Yeah.
Because when you have companies, what they've done is they've used tertiary entities to bypass constitutional law. And what I mean by that is that you have primary, which is federal, secondary, which is your state and local. The tertiary would be unions and corporations. That's the next largest lobby
level of hurt.
Well, you've allowed judges to legislate from a bench.
Exactly.
That's not an elected official that are appointed.
Exactly. And so you have the government that stands back, and we talked about this on the first one. The reason why they don't make it legal that you have to have one is they like the way this works for them better.
Yeah, they don't have to be the bad guy.
They don't have to be the bad guy at all. They can push the narrative, but they don't dictate the narrative.
Well, I didn't vote for that.
They do it behind closed doors though. And that's the problem with it. I don't know. So like I said, the problem with these discussions for me is that we all know what's right and what's wrong. We really do know what's going on. I mean, and most Americans do. The problem is going to be their willingness on how long they're going to let it go. I mean, the colonials went through the same thing. If you really think about the push the colonials were taking from England at the time. I mean, England looked at America as a place to basically pull resource and expand their financial wealth overseas.
Yeah, we were an arm of. Yeah, we were an arm of just helping them.
Yeah,
finance stuff.
Yeah. And they started getting greedy, and they started finding more and more ways of just taxing and taxing and taxing and taxing. We are beyond being taxed what they were taxed. Our exorbitant numbers are there. The problem is we have a class of elected representation.
Well, that's because your lights are still on and you're still comfortable in your house.
And you can still take a vacation even though it's under control.
Yeah.
Exactly. But so going back to, we were talking about hedge funds buying neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So one thing you have to remember about the media is when they push something like 12 months ago, they didn't just push it and forget about it. They pushed it with a script to move it to that direction. Like the Great Reset, the whole conversation about, I have friends who are like, man, I'm selling my house. I'm getting more than I can ever get for it.
Yeah.
You know, and we're having problems with some of the property that they keep raising the taxes on it.
Yep.
So when you get to the courthouse, you talk to the judge or the tax assessor, and it becomes apparent that they're not going to work with you.
You're protesting. The days of protesting taxes are pretty well gone.
Yeah, you step outside, you talk to an officer of the court, and he goes, "Hey, dude," he says, "I know exactly how you feel. They're going to keep doing this until they price you out of your property because
whatever give you get,
yeah,
it's going to be like so minimal."
Well, you have hedge funds that are buying whole neighborhoods now, and this is my point when we were talking downstairs.
This is going on in Katy.
Yeah, it's going on everywhere. This is everywhere. This is not just Katy.
Yeah.
This is in every state of the nation. You have these hedge funds that are buying up these properties, and at some point they're going to start writing rules that don't allow you to live in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
Look at HOAs and how much power.
If you own firearms or something.
Sure, it could be any arbitrary.
A 4-wheel drive truck with anything.
Or with somebody that we know where they can't park their fucking service vehicle in their driveway.
Yeah.
Which is like fucking horse shit.
Exactly.
Right. But my point is they make it to where you can't live in that neighborhood. So your only option is to rent and do what they tell you to at that point. It really boils down to this Great Reset. And again, I know we've pushed this before.
That's that tertiary effect I was talking about.
It is. And they want to own and manipulate everything at this point. And that's
because they control your behaviors. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because essentially that's what.
Then you're a product.
If you relent and go, okay, I live in this fucking neighborhood. I can live with these fucking rules.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. And you may be like passionate about whatever it is. And you're married to somebody who doesn't carry that same passion. Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is at some point, are you going to relent or are you going to help?
Is the frog going to cook in the water or jump out?